Imagine creating a vehicle so sophisticated that it was employed as the presidential vehicle by your own government. A vehicle that was given to the French president in person before it was even seen by the general public. Every morning on your approach to work, you would feel as though you were floating on clouds in a car that outperformed specially designed four-wheel drive vehicles across the Sahara Desert. Now imagine the same car, one that sold over 1 million units throughout 17 years, silently disappearing from the roads, from the showrooms, and from public memory so completely that most people today have never even heard its name. The Citroën CX is that vehicle. And once you understand the full story of why it vanished, the bankrupt birth, the American ban, the decisions from its own parent company that slowly strangled it from within, and the two separate world records it quietly set and never got credit for, you will never look at automotive history the same way again. You must first experience what the CX was replacing in order to get what made it so remarkable, as that background alters everything. The Citroën DS had been available for purchase for 19 years in 1974. It was still the most futuristic-looking vehicle on any road in the world after 19 years. The crowd at the 1955 Paris Motor Show erupted in uncontrollable cheers when the DS made its debut. People shed tears. It was referred to by journalists as an extraterrestrial vehicle. In 1974, Citroën had to develop a vehicle capable of doing so. Because aerodynamics was so important to the CX's identity, chief designer Robert Oprin and his team took on that seemingly insurmountable task and created a vehicle whose name was taken from the French acronym for drag coefficient. At a time when most manufacturers were just strapping an engine between four wheels and moving on, its drag coefficient of 0.36 was among the lowest of any production automobile on the planet. This was accomplished by actual wind tunnel testing rather than speculation or styling tricks. Before a single journalist had seen it, the CX was shown in private to French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, indicating just what kind of vehicle Citroën thought it had produced. The response mirrored that optimism when it was eventually made public at the Paris Motor Show in October 1974. It finished far ahead of the Volkswagen Golf, the Audi 50, and the Volvo 200 and was given the European Car of the Year trophy on January 29, 1975, by journalists from 14 different nations. But this is where the story takes its first genuinely personal turn. The CX was born bankrupt. Citroën went bankrupt in 1974, the very same year the CX premiered, not because its cars were failing but because of a succession of expensive engineering projects that never became lucrative, most prominently a combined rotary engine venture with NSU called Comotor. The CX was built around a rotary engine, which is the detail that shaped its entire 17-year existence. The entire engine bay was sized for a tiny rotary unit. Nothing bigger than a four-cylinder engine could fit in the remaining area after the Comotor project was shelved because it was too costly and fuel-hungry during the oil crisis. This was not a compromise on style or a way to save money. A dream that was cancelled left a structural wound that would never heal. Because the executive vehicle market was shifting towards six-cylinder and V8 engines, which the CX could not physically accept, the CX would be underpowered in comparison to its competitors during all 17 of its manufacturing years. The car's greatest evident flaw was actually a scar from before it was even conceived. Nevertheless, Citroën created something very amazing around those four-cylinder engines. Inherited and improved from the DS, the hydro-pneumatic self-leveling suspension used high-pressure hydraulic fluid in place of traditional springs and shock absorbers to automatically alter ride height according to load and road conditions. Owners who drove CXs during the 1970s and 1980s frequently described the feeling as more akin to floating than a car ride, as if the roughness of the road just did not reach the cabin. But what made the cabin truly distinctive was its instrument panel, which Citroën officially termed the lunule. Imagine taking a seat in a CX for the first time. There is no stalk indication on the steering column since Citroën's engineers determined the driver should never have to lift their hands from the wheel. Thus, indicator switches were placed on the left side of the instrument cluster itself. The speedometer was not a dial but a revolving drum, numbers printed on a cylinder that rotated beneath a magnifying lens, like something from a ship's bridge or a fighter aircraft cockpit. The steering wheel had a single spoke. The brake pedal responded to touch rather than hard foot pressure. Every part of that cockpit was the result of people who actually asked what the proper response was, rather than imitating what had always been done before. The CX Lunule was later rated one of the top 10 instrument panels ever installed in a production vehicle by Top Gear UK. Now, what no one speaks about is what happened in America. In fact, Citroën had produced cars from the 1974 model year, especially for the US market. These vehicles were prepared and put together. Then, on January 1, 1974, a new federal safety law in the United States went into effect, mandating that all passenger cars' bumper heights be kept at a consistent, uniform height. The mechanical core of every Citroën, the height-adjustable suspension, was essentially outlawed overnight. It was illegal to sell the vehicles made for the United States. Before a single consumer could enter a showroom, Citroën's largest potential new market was gone. Even Mercedes-Benz had to disable the height adjustment option on its W116 S-Class for American consumers due to the same restriction. But Mercedes had the financial resources and European dealer network to cover that loss. Citroën didn't. The majority of automotive historians just ignore this moment, which cemented the CX's permanent entry into European boundaries. The Paris-Dakar rally followed. A factory-entered Citroën CX 2400 GTI, a front-wheel drive executive saloon tune for competition, finished the 1981 Paris-Dakar in 16th position overall, ahead of much more potent four-wheel drive vehicles and first among all two-wheel drive vehicles competing. The reason was the suspension. The CX's hydro-pneumatic system withstood the damage so well that it was able to sustain higher average speeds over the tough terrain while four-wheel drives slowed down to shield its components from the desert landscape. Rally-raid vehicles designed for such situations had just been surpassed by the same vehicle that drove French government leaders to formal events. Six-time Le Mans champion Jackie X drove a second factory CX that Citroën Belgium entered in the same 1981 race. 5 international rally events were won by CX models between 1977 and 1981, including 3 straight Tour Automobile du Senegal victories and a third-place result in the 28,200-kilometre London-Sydney Marathon in 1977. The CX was more than just a high-end vehicle with a unique cabin. It was actually measurably capable across terrain that should have wrecked it. And then it quietly became the quickest diesel passenger car in the world. Not once but twice. When the turbocharged CX GTI Turbo came in 1984, it claimed that title. Then, in 1986, the upgraded GTI Turbo 2, equipped with a new air-to-air intercooler, recaptured the record with a top speed of 223 km per hour. The CX was also the first French car ever to incorporate ABS brakes as standard equipment. It debuted in 1985. These were actual world firsts, acquired via engineering alone. But they were happening at a time when the company that owned Citroën had already made its judgment about this car's future. Because here is why the CX actually went, and here is the portion of the narrative that almost never gets recounted. 3 distinct executive vehicles, the slow-selling Peugeot 604, the unsuccessful Talbot Tagora, and the CX, was suddenly vying for the same dwindling internal investment pool when Peugeot officially took over Citroën in 1976. The new parent business did not prioritize giving the CX the 6-cylinder engine that the market wanted, the interior makeover it required, or the true replacement it deserved. Citroën's own designers attempted to produce a true next-generation successor twice. Once in 1980 and again in 1986. PSA Peugeot Citroën scrapped the project both times. The Citroën designers who came up with the idea were also fired the second time. The Citroën XM, which eventually took the place of the CX in 1989, was constructed on the same chassis as the Peugeot 605. It had been formed by compromises the original CX was never forced to make, but it still bore the Citroën logo. The story is painfully clear when it comes to sales. In 1978, production of the CX reached a peak of 132,000 units. Production had dropped to 35,000 units annually between 1986 and 1987. The saloon was stopped in July 1989. Up to July 1991, the estate remained at the independent coachmaker Huliers. According to Citroën's own official statistics, which were released in September 2024 for the car's 50th anniversary, the total confirmed production across all variations was 1,042,460 vehicles. Over 1 million cars were produced and sold over the course of 17 years. French presidents Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, François Mitterrand, and Jacques Chirac all utilized the CX Prestige as their official vehicle. Between 1978 and 1989, 15 extended CX limousines were used as state vehicles by East German Chancellor Erich Honecker. 2 of them belonged to Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier III of Monaco. It carried heads of state across capital cities. No one celebrated the global records it set. Despite being classified as a luxury saloon, it won rallies in the African desert. It provided regular drivers with a ride that was unlike anything else on the planet. Then it vanished, not because it failed the individuals behind it, but rather because it outlived the period of audacious, self-reliant thought that had initially made it feasible. This vehicle was selected by more than 1 million people. However, you can drive through the majority of the world's cities today and never come upon one. The true tale lies in the gap between what the Citroën CX was and how thoroughly it has been forgotten. And you are aware of it now. Have you had the good fortune to ride in or own a Citroën CX? Share your recollection in the comments below, because this car and the people who loved it deserve far more than to be forgotten.